Your father was described as the father from hell.
Every night, I was trapped in a room with a crazy person. Gave me a nice swipe across the cheek. And I just went down. I can show you all my scars if you like.
I did 14 movies in 6 years, which is more than 2 a year, and just kind of pumping them out. I was making God knows how much money, and I didn't have a bed. I didn't even have a room. I was sleeping on the couch. I don't want to talk about how big his bed was or how big his television was.
911, what's the emergency, please?
Police were called to the Culkin residence late last night. So far, no details have been released.
I wasn't going to let him get away with those kind of things anymore.
At just 10 years old, Macaulay Culkin became the most recognizable child on the planet. His face was everywhere. His laugh echoed through movie theaters. His name was synonymous with joy, laughter, and holiday magic. But while the world saw a smiling boy outsmarting burglars, behind closed doors, a very different story was unfolding. A story of control, a story of fear, a story of a child trapped inside a machine designed to make money, not happiness. And one night, that child finally broke. This is the true story of the night Macaulay Culkin called the police on his own father, and why the most famous kid in the world disappeared almost overnight. Macaulay Culkin wasn't born into fame. He was born into ambition. His father, Kit Culkin, was a struggling actor who never found success of his own. But instead of letting go of that dream, he passed it down aggressively to his children. 7 kids, 1 vision, and 1 iron grip. From an early age, acting wasn't optional in the Culkin household. It was expected. Rehearsals replaced playtime. Auditions replaced school. And mistakes were never tolerated. When Macaulay showed natural talent, everything changed. He wasn't just a kid anymore. He was an investment. What made Kit Culkin different from other so-called stage parents wasn't just his ambition, it was the intensity of his control. Former friends and family members would later describe him as domineering, volatile, and obsessed with authority. Inside the home, his word was law. Questioning him wasn't allowed. Disagreeing came with consequences. Acting became the family's survival plan. The Culkins weren't wealthy. They lived modestly, often cramped together, and money was a constant source of tension. When Macaulay started booking roles, the pressure on him multiplied instantly. His success didn't just bring pride, it brought dependency. Suddenly, the entire household revolved around what he could earn. At just 8 years old, Macaulay was no longer seen as the youngest child with a gift. He became the financial engine of the family. And that shift was irreversible. His father took full control of his career, contracts, negotiations, schedules, all without Macaulay's understanding or consent. There were no conversations about whether he wanted to act, no discussions about rest, balance, or childhood. The assumption was simple: this is what you do now. Behind the scenes, Kit ruled with fear. Crew members, agents, and even teachers noticed it early on. His presence filled rooms with tension. His expectations were impossible. And his temper was unpredictable. People learned quickly that crossing him wasn't worth the trouble. For Macaulay, this meant growing up in a constant state of alertness. Love felt conditional. Approval felt earned, not given. And safety depended on obedience. By the age of 10, Macaulay Culkin was unstoppable. Home Alone shattered box office records. Hollywood crowned him its golden boy. Talk shows, magazine covers, red carpets, everyone wanted him. He was officially the highest-paid child actor in history, earning millions per film. But here's the part no one saw. Despite the money, despite the fame, despite the success, Macaulay didn't even have his own bed. While millions flowed into the family accounts, Macaulay and his brother slept on couches. No bedroom, no privacy, no comfort. Why? Because power mattered more than money. And his father wanted total control. Macaulay never went to a normal school. He never played tag. He didn't know how to catch a ball. His entire childhood was a schedule. Movie after movie, Interview after interview. Set after set. 14 films in 6 years. More than 2 movies every single year. And he didn't even know what most of them were about. Scripts were kept from him. Decisions were never his. He would discover the plot of his own films, sitting in a theater, watching the premiere. His life wasn't lived. It was managed. At night, the cameras stopped rolling. That's when the fear began. Hotel rooms became cages. Doors locked. Lines memorized under threat. Macaulay later described being trapped night after night with someone unpredictable and angry. Someone who ruled through intimidation, physical abuse, mental abuse, emotional manipulation. Scars that never healed, some visible, most invisible. And the worst part? No one was listening. As Macaulay grew older, his father's reputation followed him. On sets, Kit Culkin was known for explosive behavior and impossible demands. Crew members walked on eggshells. Casting directors hesitated. Eventually, the whispers began. He's too expensive. His father is impossible. It's not worth it. The very man who pushed Macaulay into fame was now destroying his career. And Macaulay felt trapped, exhausted, numb, empty. By his early teens, Macaulay was unraveling. The pace that once felt exciting had become suffocating. Sets blurred together. Cities changed so fast, he barely knew where he was waking up. Every day followed the same pattern. Wake up, perform, repeat. There was no recovery time, no pause, no space to breathe. Exhaustion wasn't just physical, it was psychological. He had been working non-stop since he was barely old enough to understand what a contract was. Adults made decisions around him, over him, and for him. His voice was never part of the conversation. And after years of that silence, something inside him began to shut down. Macaulay didn't want fame anymore. He didn't want applause. He didn't even want escape. He just wanted it to stop. When he finally gathered the courage to ask for a break, it wasn't dramatic or rebellious. It was quiet, almost apologetic. He told his father he was exhausted, that he felt overwhelmed, that he needed time to rest. For a brief moment, it seemed like he was being heard. He was told it was fine, that he could slow down, that everything would be okay. And then, without warning, he was sent straight to the next job. That betrayal changed something fundamental. From that point on, Macaulay stopped trusting words. Promises meant nothing. Agreements were temporary illusions. He realized that no matter how clearly he expressed his limits, they would always be ignored if money was on the line. So he did the only thing he could. He turned himself off. Emotionally, he became distant. On set, he hit his marks and delivered his lines, but the joy was gone. The spark people loved on screen had become mechanical. Off camera, he withdrew completely. Conversations felt heavy. Laughter felt fake. Even anger took too much energy. One weekend, Macaulay did something small but dangerous. He left without permission. No schedule. No explanation. No control. When he returned, his father was furious. Words turned to rage. Rage turned to violence. A strike across the face sent Macaulay to the ground. Another followed. And in that moment, something changed. He didn't fight back. He didn't scream. He made a decision. He locked himself in his room, and he picked up the phone. When the police arrived at the Culkin residence, the atmosphere inside the apartment was thick with tension. The kind that lingers long after shouting has stopped. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a one-time argument. This was the breaking point of years of fear, control, and silence. A 15-year-old boy stood on the other side of that locked door, shaken but resolute. For the first time in his life, authority had entered a world that had operated unchecked for years. The power imbalance that had defined his childhood was suddenly interrupted. Officers listened. Questions were asked. Statements were taken. And for once, Macaulay wasn't being spoken for, he was being spoken to. His father admitted to striking him. The explanation was casual, almost dismissive, framed as discipline, missed school, a messy room, ordinary excuses offered for an extraordinary situation. But the officers recognized what mattered most. This wasn't discipline, it was violence. The call itself was brief, but the weight of it was enormous. That phone call shattered an illusion that had protected his father for years, the illusion that success excused behavior, that money justified control, that fame made everything acceptable. Once law enforcement became involved, the private nightmare became a public matter, and there was no going back. For Macaulay, the call wasn't impulsive. It wasn't done out of anger or revenge. It was the result of a realization that had been building quietly for years. No one was going to save him unless he acted himself. In that moment, he understood something no child should ever have to understand, that survival sometimes means standing up to the very person who holds the most power over you. The emotional cost was immediate. Fear collided with relief. Guilt clashed with clarity. And loyalty battled self-preservation. Calling the police on his own father didn't feel like victory. It felt like loss. It meant accepting that the family he had been trying to protect, or at least hold together, was already broken. But it also meant something else. It meant the abuse had finally been named. Once that line was crossed, everything changed. News spread quickly. The incident didn't stay private for long. Whispers moved through Hollywood. Then, headlines followed. The most famous child in the world was suddenly at the center of a police report, not as a star, but as a victim. And while the public tried to process the shock, Macaulay was processing something far more personal. For the first time, he had said no, and it had been heard. That single decision set off a chain reaction that would dismantle his family structure, ignite a brutal custody battle, and ultimately lead to his complete withdrawal from Hollywood. But on that night, none of that was clear yet. The fallout was immediate and brutal. His parents separated. A vicious custody battle exploded in the media. Every detail was dissected publicly. Macaulay became a headline instead of a human. And all he wanted was to disappear, to grow up quietly, to be forgotten. When the court finally ruled in his mother's favor, Macaulay did something no one expected. He walked away. At 14 years old, he retired. He removed his parents from control of his fortune. Millions of dollars, untouched. Hollywood was stunned. The world asked one question: what happened to Macaulay Culkin? Without answers, rumors filled the silence. Drug addiction, prison, mental breakdowns. Photos of a thin, exhausted Macaulay spread online. Headlines declared him dying. The truth? He was drowning in depression, grieving losses, processing trauma, trying to feel something again. He spent days in isolation, hours in a bathtub. Food lost its taste. Life lost its color. The hardest part wasn't sadness. It was numbness. Waking up and feeling nothing. No anger, no joy, no fear, just emptiness. But slowly, painfully healing began. Macaulay confronted his past instead of running from it. And for the first time, he chose himself. Years later, Macaulay returned to acting not as a child star, but as a man with boundaries. No pressure, no control, no exploitation. During that return, he met Brenda Song. And for the first time, love felt safe.
I'd like to thank Brenda. You are absolutely everything. You're my champion. You're the only person happier for me today than I am. You're not only the best woman I've ever known, you're the best person I've ever known. You've given me just all my purpose.
Macaulay Culkin is a father, 2 sons, a family built on love, not fear. He uses a word he rarely heard growing up: proud. Proud of his children, proud of himself, proud that he broke the cycle. The world remembers Macaulay Culkin as the kid from Home Alone, but the truth is far more powerful. He survived what should have destroyed him. He escaped. He healed. He rebuilt. And the night he called the cops on his own father, that wasn't betrayal. That was survival. Because sometimes the bravest thing a child can do is finally say enough.
I don't know, my father was very good at breaking people's spirits and holding them down. And he did that to all of us. Forget about how much money I was making, but I was sleeping on the couch. And
Why?
I think it was just a way of him wanting to break my spirit. He wanted me to know, and my brother to know, that he was in charge, and that if he didn't want us to sleep on a bed, we weren't going to sleep on a bed. I remember I went up to my father, and I asked him, I said, you know, I think I need some time off. I'm really, really exhausted. And he said, yeah, sure, no problem. And the next thing I knew, I was on the next set, you know.